Hi class, about I think more than half of you are actually TEM majors. And so you're interested in how does this marketing apply to the entrepreneur's journey. But it applies more than to TEM students. Just the elements and how you apply it pretty much applies to any kind of new venture. But let me give you an example. So these are the steps in order to understand how to apply marketing to the entrepreneur's journey. You need to know the steps going on. And we start out with ideation. So the thing is, the ideas really aren't all that different. But the big thing about all these marketing ideas is how disciplined are you in your problem solving and knowing what to apply. This is Dr. Cho's what he calls on the road. These are the phases that you go through in a startup. So first you come up with your concept, you do your research to see whether or not it's feasible, and then you're on your way. And then you hit what I call the ditch of death. And the ditch of death is you don't have enough money to make your alpha product. You don't have enough money to try to show people what your product does. And so in that case, this is where you go to friends and family, or you bootstrap, which means you try to find other ways to do things. And there's a lot of sweat equity. And so after you make your alpha, the problem is that in a lot of cases you hit what's called the valley of death. And that's that you realize you don't have enough money to get to a beta. You spent a lot more money doing your alpha that you can't get to a beta. And so therefore what ends up happening is you have to start bootstrapping and try to come up with other ways to try to do it. But once I have my beta, then you hit something which is called the fog. And what the fog is that startups move so quickly and so rapidly. Your strategic management, which is your CEO and your main executives, they set the direction of the company. The second pillar of your company is your marketing, and the third pillar is your product development. And each of them is working at different rates. They don't always communicate, and what ends up happening is you end up in the fog. And that's that one is going faster than the other as you scale and develop. For example, I'm a marketer. I get in front of a group of customers. They say, gee, we really want this by June. And so you can't say no to them or you're going to lose them as customers. So you say, yes, we can do that. And then you go to your product people and they say, we're not going to be ready till November. Now all of a sudden, what do? And if you don't know how to handle it, then pretty much it could be all over for your company. The thing is, why do things go up and down? And those are basically pivots that the first idea you come up with may not be the right idea. So then you pivot over to a different idea. Then you pivot over to a different idea. Then you reach the chasm. And we talked about the chasm in class. All of a sudden you get some sales from your cult and your early adopters, but then you hit the chasm. And then finally you hit the knee where you can grow and you get into the early majority. Now, why is it so ripply as I scale and grow? Well, if you recall, what are we trying to do? We're trying to fill buckets. And so typically growth isn't this nice smooth curve. It's normally up and down. And finally we can harvest if we want to. And essentially you can harvest any time after you get to a beta, possibly with an alpha. But naturally the further down the road you are, the more money you can ask for. So in terms of how you evolve as a marketer, what it comes down to is you start from your idea. That's the first phase. The second phase is there an opportunity? You go to market, you cross the chasm, and you grow. In terms of being an entrepreneur, these are the big questions you have to ask yourself. Am I exceptional at something? Can my idea make a sustainable profit and be difficult to copy? Now, be difficult to copy doesn't mean they could do exactly the same thing. For example, Uber is still the #1 rideshare company in the world, although lots of people have tried to copy it. Walmart, it's basically a store, difficult model to copy, so is Southwest. And so Difficult to copy can mean a lot of things. And in a lot of cases, do you understand the nuance? What are the things that you can be exceptional at? Remember, price leadership or operational leadership, product leadership, customer intimacy. That's what I can be good at. In terms of orientation of my company, am I about technology, which is the car? Is it about the customer? Or is it the market? So what are the things that I excel at? And in terms of advantage, it could be technology, it could be your strategy, or it could be the way you integrate your products together. Now, in terms of ideation, this goes into marketing, and that's what problem are you solving? The thing is, most people come up with products quite simply because they see a problem and they say, gee, wouldn't it be great to have this? And now the question is, can I make money, and is it difficult to copy, and all those other things. In terms of the marketing approach, what market segments are we going after? Well, typically entrepreneurs are either going after a niche, which is a piece of a big pie, a gap, which is an unmet need, or differentiation, meaning my approach in this area is just far, far superior. And so you know the techniques that we use, and then the question becomes, how much is a customer going to value it? How much money can I make? Here's an example of niches. And so what happens is that supposing we have portable music players, and part of my market in portable music players are athletes. Well, then somebody comes in wearing a wearable music player, something that's smaller and designed, unobtrusive. And what ends up happening is that a section of my original market in portable music players, they start to migrate because they like the wearable music player. And so my athletes start to leave my portable music player market. And not only that, but other people start coming in who can also benefit. The thing is, these people have always existed, but a product has never been there which addresses their needs. And so what ends up happening is you see this shift from the portable music player to the wearable music player. And so what happens is that the markets change. Gaps. Where do I typically find gaps? Well, you can look at the supply chain or the value chain and see where there are opportunities. Laggard industries are a good place to look for gaps, like, for example, machine shops, things like that. Businesses that are slow to adapt new technology. Another area where you can find gaps is international. And that's that the rest of the world, I mean, let's face it, we have the highest standard of living in the world, along with the other G7 type nations. However, in other places in the world, they don't have things that we take for granted. So maybe over there, you have an opportunity. And the other way you find gaps are context events, like a law changes or something. Because the rules have changed, guess what? A solution doesn't exist for that. Tech innovation. Okay, tech innovation is about me going for best product. And so innovation is just commercialization times invention. And that's the thing, when people talk about growing the market or growing the economy, you can shift numbers around all you want, but eventually there has to be some kind of fundamental under there. And typically technology and invention is driven large waves of product and innovation. So what is the value of technology? Zippo. And as a PhD, that's a very hard lesson I learned. And that's that until you can convert it into a product and service, it's basically just a science project. In terms of technology, I am going to zip through this. But what you see in technology is that there are waves, meaning there's a wave of invention that gets followed by a wave of innovation, where people take advantage of that technology and turn it into products. And then the cycle starts again. And so, for example, we had the steam engine and the telegraph and everything else, and that led to railroads. And then the early 1900s, what happened? They took those technologies and created power systems in the automobile and aircraft. TV came along in the middle. But essentially, what ended up happening is over that period of time is there was a period of innovation. Then in the 1960s, we started getting semiconductors and then microsensors and the internet. And subsequently, we are currently now in a period of innovation. Now, if I had fallen asleep in 1950 and woke up in 1980, the world is mostly the same. Yeah, the cars are different and there are more airplanes and things like that. But for the most part, most of the stuff you find in the 1980s, you could find in the 1950s and vice versa. However, if I fell asleep in 1980 and woke up in 2010, the world is a drastically different place. I mean, what if you talked to somebody in 1980 and told them, at my fingertips, I have the world's information, they would be in awe and ask you, what do you do with this kind of power? And it's like, what, you throw birds at pigs? I mean, anyway. So, the thing is, just to give you an idea of the process entrepreneurs go through, let's start off with context. And that's that we think about, all these gun shootings, it's an issue in our society. And the question is, how do criminals get these guns? And as it turns out, everybody thinks there's some shady guy that only criminals know about, and they could, they pull up in a trunk and then they have, RPGs and things like that. And that's nowhere near the truth. The hard truth is that it's so easy to get a gun in this country. They can easily buy one. A lot of them, they do what teenagers did in the 1980s. Hey, can you buy, when you're buying guns, can you get an extra one for me? There are also a lot of shady dealers out there who have firearm lessons. Anyway, because it's so easy to get a gun, the question is, eventually people are going to want more safety. And especially since when you look at Columbine and all these other events, quite sadly, all those events happen because of legal guns. Everybody in those events used a legal gun. Now, just for the record, Dr. Cho believes in gun ownership. He believes that people should have a right to own a gun. However, Dr. Cho also believes that he considers a gun to be a hazardous material. The gun serves one function and only one function only, and that's to take life. And so therefore, he believes that it should be regulated in terms of safety standards. I mean, I can't go out and buy hydrochloric acid without going through a bunch of hoops regarding safety. So the thing is, I cannot buy pure acetone without going through certain safety standards. So if you can regulate somebody buying acetone, why can't you regulate them buying a gun? Oh, and for the record, Dr. Cho has actually been checked out by Homeland Security and the FBI. One time in my startup, I accidentally ordered a pound of ammonia, bomb-making material, and I just didn't think of it. I was using it as a catalyst for something else. And next thing I know, both of them are all over me asking, why do you want to buy a pound of this? And so I had to, it delayed me for a month when they went through the review and found out that we were on the level. But I have to hand it to our law enforcement. They're out there protecting our country, which is a good thing. Not so good thing for my startup, but anyway. The thing is, supposing the law standard came around, and this is a hypothetical situation, that a law got passed, that all guns have to be disabled in some way when not in use. That's one way to protect this legal use of legal guns. Now, the first thing I have to ask myself is there an opportunity here? And so what are the things I think about in terms of an opportunity? Is the market big enough that I can make money? Will enough people buy it? How tough it is to get into this market? And how do I keep others out? Lock in, entry, lock out. Can I make it happen? Remember the 5 C's company. Is there something that I can do which can take advantage of this? And most of all, what is the value proposition? A lot of products fail because they quite frankly have lousy value propositions. And so when we look at the topics that we've learned in this class, you know enough to answer all those questions. And so in terms of entry, I look at the competition. Again, this is why you go through the 5 C's. And when I think about it, all the competition in this gun safety arena are all focused on the gun. That essentially what they're focused on is essentially changing your gun in some way. And by changing it, like for example, Armatrix, they offer a whole new different pistol. What if you don't like the way it fires? The thing is, I worked with a guy and he told me he owned like 30 guns, and he asked me if that bothered me. And I said, do you give them away to anyone? He says, no, and he's very law-abiding, and he has them all in a safe and everything else. And I said, I don't care. And he told me, one's a rifle, and one's a shotgun, and he has different kinds of pistols. And I just said to him, you can't fire them all at the same time, so yeah, go ahead, have his... And because he looked at every gun as being a different tool. Anyway, I'll take a break here, and we'll go on to the next video.